Hello, my name is Toby Thompson. I'm here with Dr. Brian Smith. Brian's at the PhD alumni dinner, which hopefully you're looking forward to. Brian, you graduated in 2003 and Malcolm McDonald was your supervisor. Tell me about your topic, tell me about your research.
I studied the effectiveness, or otherwise, of strategy making processes in medical markets, so pharmaceuticals, medical technologies, any market where the customer is the healthcare system or physicians.
Right.
And I'd worked in that industry for 20 years prior to doing my PhD, first as a research chemist and then as a marketer and working in strategy. And after 20 years I decided I wanted to go and really understand the subject.
So you saw a shortfall or in your understanding, or saw there problems or issues that you could have helped with?
My feeling at the time was that the large majority of what you read in the textbooks, and I'd done all of my marketing qualifications and I'd been an examiner for the Chartered Institute of Marketing, so I was really quite well qualified in my discipline from a professional point of view. But my feeling was that still the majority of the textbooks were written from the perspective of markets that weren't like medical markets. You know, they were either consumer markets or financial services or perhaps high tech. But pharmaceuticals and medical technology are markets where the customer is a physician or a healthcare system are very different. You know, the way that they're regulated, the way that what the outcome is. If I missell you a pension, you have less money. If I missell you a drug, it has all the more serious consequences.
So the research topic came ready formed. How was the process of PhD? Was that teased out of you more? Did you change your mind after through?
I think certainly the focus changed as I went through, as I learnt more. I think almost everybody who does a PhD starts with what they look back on is quite a naive view of what their PhD is going to be about. I had this naive view that what I was going to do was go into companies, measure the amount of the marketing textbook that they used, if you like. They don't do much planning, they do lots of it, plot it against their success, get a nice straight line graph and go, ta-da, it's done.
But that at least got you in, that view, that naive as it may have been,
That's right.
Got you in doing
That's
something.
Right. That's what my initial interest was in the first place. It proved to be hopelessly and sweetly naive.
So your advice to someone who's thinking of a similar sort of thing is to have that idea, have those sorts of ideas, but come open-minded?
I think it's a good idea to come with a management problem in mind, partly because that brings relevance to what you do, and partly because that's what lights your fire. I wanted to solve that problem. I could see in my experience of working in companies, and I'd only ever worked in big, global, very well-known multinationals. I could see that actually they didn't make a terribly good job of making and implementing strategy. And I wanted to understand that problem, and that fire kept me going. In fact, still keeps me going. It's still what I research now.
We'll come on to that in a second, but tell me more about the supervisory process. How was that for you? How did you feel
Well,
for that?
I'd decided, and I would tell this now to anybody considering doing a PhD, that doing a PhD is such a huge investment of time and money, but especially time and effort. I mean, you put your heart and soul into it for years, and I decided I was only going to do it if I could do it really well. There was no point in going at this sort of in a half-hearted sort of way, and that meant doing it at a good school. And Cranfield obviously has a fantastic reputation, but just as importantly, doing it with the best supervisor I could find, the best person in the world. Now, in my field, strategic marketing planning, the man was a guy called Malcolm McDonald. I mean, everybody knows him. You sit on an aeroplane halfway across the world and people say, oh yes, Malcolm McDonald, yes, we know it. And I had a sort of loose connection with Malcolm. I knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. And I arranged to meet Malcolm. I went to see him and I said, I want to do this. And rather cheaply said, and I want to do it with you, Malcolm. And he said, tell me about what you're interested in, why, and he agreed to supervise me, fortunately.
Wow, and that's led you where? Where's that?
Well, I divide my time in three now. I still work in the field of strategy making in medical markets, but I spend a third of my time researching still. I'm a research fellow at the Open University Business School, and I'm an adjunct professor at Bocconi SDA Business School in Milan. And there I research, in particular I'm researching implementation, why firms write a plan but don't implement it. A third of my time I write about the subject. I've published 3 major books. I'm working on my 4th now, and over 200 papers and articles on the subject. And a third of my time, I go into companies and help them to do it. I work with boards and they say to me, we need a strong strategy, or we've tried doing strategy and it doesn't work. How do we make this thing happen in the real world, you know, in the realities of regulation and patent expiries and all of the other stuff that we have to deal with in medical markets.
And that all came from a hunch that you had, or some idea that you had of something not being quite right?
Well, I could see that, you know, I suppose you describe it, could see it as an unmet need, but I'd be lying, to be honest, if I thought it was an unmet need that I'm going to develop a product to sell into it. That's not the way I approached it. I was just genuinely, completely scientifically curious about it. I wanted to know why this was, because there are libraries full of textbooks about how you make strategy. And by and large, that's not what happens in real life. You know, there's politics and there's force majeure and things forcing it to do stuff. And by and large, even really good companies, even the sort of companies that you look up to, you look at how they make strategies and the strategies they have, and they're not strongly differentiated, and they have huge price pressures, and it's not how the textbook says it should happen. Now that's interesting to me, that you have an apparently well-documented solution. You have apparently very bright companies stuffed full of very bright people with lots of resources, and they're not doing it. Now that's, to me, that's interesting. It's fascinating.
More to come by the sound of it. Dr. Brian Smith, thank you very much indeed for your time.
You're welcome.